We're professionals.
Yes. Bria, James, it's so nice to formally meet you both.
Yeah, it's
You
so
too.
nice to have you on. We've been talking for a little while over messages, and then seeing your post is always fun. I
Yeah.
love when you do the photography and you match it with a song. So fun.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and sometimes it is kind of difficult to find a song to go with the photo. So I had done the one with Kermit dancing with the coat rack,
Yeah.
and I was hoping to find "Stepping Out with a Star," and but it's not on Instagram. So I was like, well,
Oh,
it's basically a Fred Astaire number, so just throw in a Fred Astaire song.
there you go.
Ah, yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, nice.
Yeah. So yeah.
I think that's the intro right there. I think we keep it. That was great. That was fantastic.
Totally. Well, we want to properly introduce you. Welcome, Lucas.
Hey, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate this.
Lucas
Yeah.
is a toy photographer, also a interviewer, and all around good guy. Everybody. So
Mhm.
if you haven't already liked to his page and subscribe to it, and on Instagram, make sure to do so.
Yeah, Lucas, what's your handle again on Instagram?
So it's Earless Wonder. It was a
Right.
name given. It was a name given to me when I was in middle school by basically a schoolyard bully that I kind of made my own.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's always nice when you can take something and make it your own like that. So,
Yeah.
and then of course I run the Muppet Collection page on Facebook,
Yes.
which is yeah. Um, it started, gosh, almost 7.5 years ago, where it started with the Diamond Select figures that were coming out. I was just going to make a page dedicated to those figures.
Mhm.
And as I kept going, well, one thing, they weren't releasing as many figures as Palisades had done. And secondly, I had all this other stuff within my collection. And I was like, well, maybe I ought to like broaden it and make it for, you know, any type of Muppet, Fraggle Rock, Sesame Street, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Muppet Babies, the Ninja Turtle movies, like really, yeah, like see what's out there and
Mhm.
make it kind of a home base for any type of collectible Henson related that people across the world can share.
That's awesome.
It's a
That's
great
so cool.
umbrella too.
Yeah.
That's a great way to do that. We can
Yeah,
relate
yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
So where are you from,
absolutely.
Lucas? What's your origin story?
So I'm originally from Kansas City. I lived in Kansas City for the
Nice.
first couple of years of my life. I was somebody who I'm sure a lot of people can relate, at least in regards to Sesame Street, but the Muppets have just always kind of been there. I can't remember like a day one. It's,
Yeah.
because it wasn't just Sesame Street, it was also the Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock as well.
Mm.
Aw.
And I'm old enough to remember when the Jim Henson Hour was on Sunday nights.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I remember,
Cool.
yeah, yeah, like Kermit, Gonzo, Digit, Leon, Vicky, Bean Bunny. Like I remember when
Aw.
those guys
Yeah.
were like the Muppets, as well as Piggy, Fozzie, Scooter, all those guys too.
Yeah. That's a great note, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I really resonate with what you said that you can't pinpoint the day the Muppets came into your life, but they have just always been present because same here. And
yeah,
what a
exactly.
lovely way to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's certain things in your life and society that are like that. And
Mhm.
we don't get a chance to think about it very often, but it's so true. Especially with something like this that since we were kids, we've been into.
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
What got you, as we mentioned before, that Lucas is a toy photographer, and I feel like that's really not giving you justice of what you do. A way to
Yeah.
word it, though, at least to give it some description. But why photography? Why toys? What about that did you enjoy? Do you enjoy?
Mhm.
So again, it kind of started with the page where I was debuting these Diamond Select figures. And so I was in Pennsylvania. I used to work for a company where we would go out to different power plants when they would do, basically, they would kind of quote unquote shut down to do repairs in certain areas of the power plant. And that was a 12-hour a day, 7 days a week job for 4 months straight. And it was long work. But during that time is when I started getting the Diamond Select figures. And I was renting this apartment when I was in Pennsylvania, where I first got the first wave of Diamond Select figures. And I just started like taking photos of the ones that I had. Like Kermit, there's one of like Kermit yelling at Robin. There's one of Kermit holding a Hershey kiss. There's one with Fozzie and Scooter. And I was like, this is kind of fun. And then at the same time, I was already looking at toy photography on Instagram. And I thought it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing my own shots. They were very, I look at, it's funny. This is what I love about the Facebook history thing is that as a photographer, I've seen where I started and how bad it was. I wasn't using natural lighting. I wasn't zooming in. I wasn't cropping. I was using, like just bad techniques for a starter, which I'm sure everybody does.
Yeah, definitely.
But,
absolutely.
Yeah. But I was also friends with other artists at the time who were like, I like what you're doing here. Here's some tips.
Oh,
And they were like, and they were very helpful. One person I'll never forget, it was almost like the way Jim Henson treated the television set for puppets, where the TV set was the stage.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine told me, he goes, really get into the figures, make your figures fill the frame.
Ooh, that's a really good tip.
Yeah, that's really...
So and that's why when I do those things, it's sometimes I for the sake of it, I need to do a wide shot, but a lot of times I do zoom ins. Sometimes it's nice just to do a zoom in, especially on a Muppet character, because they in the movies and shows they exist above the waist. So in the photo, to make it more realistic, they need to exist above the waist.
Yeah, that's so cool. I
love that. I love that mixing of worlds.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think something that makes your photography stand out in that umbrella of toy photography is the staging that you do. It's always, I love how unique it is with like every shot you do and then pairing it with the music, like I mentioned before. It's just so cool. You get to like take a peek inside this other like toy world that we all imagined when we were little, when we were playing with our toys and imagining that background and everything. I don't know if that made sense or just went rambling, but I really appreciate it.
No, 100%. Yeah. A lot of it has to do with kind of channeling me being a little kid and having these figures and like, when you're playing with toys as a little kid, there's a lot of imagination involved. So when you're doing a lot of photography, you tend to find things that maybe you don't have like the full set of, I don't have a diorama for the church that the Electric Mayhem's in, for example. But if I take a bunch of props that came with the Palisades and Diamond Select figures, like find some way to like just kind of in a messy way stack them and just kind of like group them all together where it's like a messily organized.
I like that.
Where it looks ad hoc, but it also there's I don't know if crisp is the right word, but it definitely gives the look of like you're there.
Yeah, your photo that is a good word for it. Your photographs always look really crisp and clear, and they're just very aesthetically pleasing to look at. I always look forward to it when it pops up on my timeline.
Well, and I'll tell you guys this: I have a few in mind coming up. Were you guys fan of the 2015 The Muppets show, where it was a documentary style?
Yes.
So I recently acquired some accessories, and I have a background that looks like, when I put it all together the other day, it looks a lot like Miss Piggy's set.
Oh, cool!
With her desk, the microphone, And I was like, okay, I can do this. And then so I also have one of the Alf figure from NECA.
Whoa.
And he comes with a bunch of radio stuff. So I thought it would be fun if it was like kind of like 60 Minutes when they would go to like the set of like Friends or The Office and they would interview like Steve Carell or Jennifer Aniston, where Alf is the interviewer is talking to Kermit on the set of the Muppet Show, like, where do you guys see yourself in 10 years or whatever? So it's going to be Kermit and Alf. It's going to be Kermit and Alf in the foreground with they're obviously in the backstage of the Muppet Show. So you see like this empty, like everyone's gone home for the day backstage, and in the foreground it's Alf interviewing Kermit.
That's perfect.
That's so
That's
creative.
so good.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that little
Yeah,
peek with
yeah.
us.
Yeah,
A little sneak peek there, some previews.
Yeah,
I didn't expect that.
I'm
That was
excited
great.
to see that.
When
But
it
yeah,
comes,
no, a lot of it just has to do with like, well, A, inspiration from the stuff that's already existed, but B, finding something, completely and totally unique that nobody's done. I'm also a big Deadpool fan. And
Mhm.
so like I have another one coming up where Deadpool's hosting the Muppet Show. So
Oh my
oh God, would
gosh.
that be perfect? Oh,
yeah.
that'd be amazing. Especially if you could have Ryan Reynolds actually doing like actually being Deadpool doing it, because him and Muppets would be a perfect world
What
mix.
a
Like that would be
chaos.
actually, I actually feel like that
Yeah.
would be it. Might not be kid rated, but it'd be pretty good. It'd be pretty. I like that.
Sure. Well, and here's the thing, like there's certainly a lot of stuff in today's iteration of the Muppets that I do like, but
Mhm.
I am somebody, and I feel very fortunate about this because I was born in the era I was born. I am far more familiar with like what came first.
Yeah.
So, like some of the edgier shows, like Alice Cooper,
Hmm.
like those are the kind of the things that I really like, where
Yeah.
there's a bit of edge to it. There's something more risque to it.
Mhm.
It's not all, which don't get me wrong, the compassion and the empathy that the Muppets give people is 100%, the greatest thing about it. But
Yeah.
something I also love is the the anarchy, the craziness, the what the hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the essence of Henson. That
Mhm.
we
Yes.
learned, if we didn't know it already from the documentary, we really got that from
Yeah.
him, that he had a rebellious spirit, he had an insane imagination with a beautiful heart, with a
Yeah.
very
Yes.
empathetic, beautiful heart. And it's such a combat. It's nice when when that continues, to see that kind of
Yeah.
continue with it and everything.
Mhm.
It's only makes sense that the Muppets in some levels would age with us, with those that core group that it kind of like got it started and everything. You could say, as far as a fan base, that it would age
Yeah.
with. The smartest stuff kind of does that. I'm not a I'm not a huge fan of the author necessarily, but what I thought they did right with those Harry Potter books
Mhm.
was her kind of aging with her audience a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Beatles did that. I mean, that's just kind of smart to be, if you can pull it off. But to be able to do it with this subject, with like kids stuff, is incredibly an incredible
Yeah.
feat, to
Yeah.
where we're all in our separate ages here, and we're still just as into the Muppets. We care just as much about it. We're
Yeah.
in fact looking for ways to incorporate it into our day-to-day adult lives, where our jobs and everything. It says something.
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of different arts. Like I write, I act, I do those things. That's interesting to me, but I'm much more interested in painters and photographers and everything. And when it comes to there's a lot of different ways you could have done this. There's a billion different apps, there's a million different social media kind of ways of doing it. What was it about photography and the kind of still form photography that you really enjoy?
I think it's about capturing a moment. It's about
Mhm.
if you set your figures up right, if you have accessories in the right spots, if you have a great background to work with, especially if you're working outside. I did one recently. I'm sure you guys saw. Uh, Obviously, it's not Kermit and Fozzie and the Studebaker, but I had this old fork I was getting ready to throw away, and I literally just put it in the crack of the sidewalks, sat Fozzie and Kermit in front of it, and Kermit's holding a map with the banjo over his back, and Fozzie, you know, you, you just have to know. You have to let the audience draw the conclusion, and some
Yeah.
conclusions are much easier to draw than others. Um, I certainly love the cleverness of it, the playfulness of it. Just finding something new. I never want to recreate a shot that is
Mhm.
already done in promo work. For
Mhm.
example, if I
Interesting.
see
Yeah.
posters or lunch boxes or anything like that where the Muppets have already been posed and they're already doing a certain thing or another, I don't want to do that, especially the art that unfortunately is recirculated and recirculated today,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because back in the 80s that was not the case.
Yeah.
um, Michael K. Frist, the head designer, was the guy who was really leading the way in terms of original poster art, original promo stuff. Like he was very creative. It was never let's do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really
So yeah,
interesting background.
Yeah.
yeah. That's the thing. I study this like, like I feel like I know the Muppets the way an archaeologist would be able to look at a femur from a stegosaurus and be able to
Right.
tell if it was male or female. Like this is the kind of stuff I'm very like deep into. I've learned a lot about. It's still very fascinating. When you get books like the Richard Hunt Funny Boy.
Mm.
I
Uh,
want to read that.
Yeah.
oh, it's so good. Or of course, Jim Henson's Idea Man.
Yeah.
Like you, and especially when it comes to documentaries, and I don't know if you guys have seen this or at least experienced it. I feel like with every documentary that comes out about the Muppets, it's like turning the kaleidoscope just a little bit, which
Yeah.
means you're getting a different point of view.
Yes.
You're getting a different perspective on who all these people are, the work they put in, and just how much they really loved what they did. Jerry Jewell had said at one point, he goes, "There's a point after Fraggle Rock ended that Jim and Jerry Jewell and a few others, they were kind of sitting around and they're like, we're really doing something here." Like they were already doing something by the time the Muppet Show ended.
Yeah.
And so for them, like at Fraggle Rock, to have that moment when they got the Muppet movie, Dark Crystal, The Great Muppet Caper under their belt.
Yeah.
They've got, 15 years of Sesame Street. Like that's a huge thing to accomplish in one life within a span of around 20 years, really.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely remarkable.
Mhm. You've mentioned a handful of people that helped you kind of like fine tune things and get things where you wanted to. What other kind of influences have you had when it comes to this? I've been like influenced by photographers before myself, but I find that like especially with acting, most of my bigger influences aren't actors. They're writers or they're musicians. A lot of that. Do you pull from a lot of places?
It's funny. I'm glad you mentioned writing. Like a lot of it really just has to do. Like I'm also a stand-up comic, and a
Hmm.
lot of like where I kind of come from when it, especially, well, really anything, but of course, photography is just something that's kind of funny. Like, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Mhm.
It's not a big laugh, obviously, but it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like I really like that, especially for people who are Muppet fans
Yeah.
or fans of The Simpsons or Breaking Bad or X-Men. Like, I like finding something that's, there's there's a bit of humor in almost everything I do. So really has to do with, people who I've always found funny, but also I've also been a big fan of writers because there's a lot of I love creativity. I thrive off of creativity. I love meeting creative people,
Mhm.
such as yourselves, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
Thank you.
thank you.
I,
Likewise.
I
Mhm.
I'm very fascinated by people who they have something that they love and they want to put their own voice to it, and that's what creativity is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't have said that better myself. That was really beautiful.
I tell not just my students but any other people I'm working with all the time. I got a good friend of mine who's a stand-up comic out in Oakland, and he's been doing it for over 20 years. And there's times where he's working on something and he's just so frustrated because he can't. He's trying to reinvent the wheel. He's trying to
Yeah.
well, how can I do how the chicken cross the road different? And I got to remind him sometimes that him doing it already makes it an original. Like
Yeah.
nobody has the point of view that you have. Nobody's gonna have the fingerprints that you have on this. So automatically, it's gonna have a different spin to it, or it's gonna be done a little differently than Bree or I would do it, or something like that.
Yeah.
Whether it's funny or not is a whole other subject. But as far as actually like coming up with something original or anything, I see so many creative people pushing and trying so hard to reinvent
Mhm.
something or do something
Those are really
differently.
good.
but you already are. You don't have to try that hard. Again, to
Right.
make it funny or talented or successful or anything might take a little more work, but you are alone are an original, every one of us.
Mhm.
So you're already going to be doing something a little differently than anybody
Yeah.
else would.
I love that.
I didn't know about the stand. I thought I did my homework on you, man. I didn't know about the stand-up comedy. That's awesome. What made
Well,
you want to do that?
so I had taken nearly 5 years off,
Hmm.
and some of it, of course, had to do with COVID.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I had started getting back into it recently, and thank goodness during that time when I wasn't performing, I was still writing. I'm somebody I love a turn of phrase. I love non sequiturs. I especially not to toot my own horn, but I know I have a different perspective than a lot of other people may have.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Toot your
Uh,
horn.
Mhm.
yeah, like this is gonna sound a little whatever, but a lot of it has to do with, first of all, like you were talking about, you cannot overthink it. If you overthink it, then you're not going to be able to find your own voice because you're so concerned with
Yeah.
reinventing the wheel. Because
Mhm.
it's not so much about reinventing the wheel, it's really just about being honest with yourself, which is sometimes the hardest thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
And
Very much.
so when it comes to that, I think it's just kind of important to just relax a little bit, not really, you can't be urgent to take, to find a new idea for a photo. You cannot be urgent about having that new joke. You
Mm.
have to let time give it to you, but at the same time you have to be working as well, because there's a lot of other things in your daily life, whether you're work, you're talking to your friends, your family. There are things that are going to come up that have nothing to do with your artistic avenue that are
Mm.
going to inspire you in that world,
Mhm.
for good or bad too.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That really inspired me.
Good. Yeah, that was deep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good.
Thank you, Lucas. Actually, I have a fun question for you. If you could open for a stand-up comic, who would you want to open for?
Great question.
Oh gosh,
I want to answer that. That's such a good question.
that's
You,
like asking my favorite Muppet, to be honest. Like that's really
yeah.
hard.
Well, it could be like not your favorite comic, but maybe one that you think would align with, like
Mm.
be a good
Yeah,
opener for.
yeah. I'll tell you, a guy I've always loved, and I still remember watching him on the Tonight Show, was Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh.
Love Rodney.
Oh.
Yeah. One of my first toy photos was, there was a black and white photo
I saw
of
this.
Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah, okay. And I had done, somebody had already put a photo of Fozzie next to Rodney. I was like, well, I need to do the toy version of this. And so
Aw.
it's Rodney dressed as himself with
Yeah.
Fozzie next, looking pretty much just like Rodney.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Rodney. Gosh, if we're going with living or dead, I would have to go with Rodney Dangerfield. Um, yeah, there's quite a few. Um, I yeah, I like people who aren't. I am somebody so Rodney Dangerfield. I'm somebody, I don't shy away from self-deprecation.
Mhm.
I have no problem, like, I got to be honest, like when people come up and talk to me after a show, like, it's there a lot of times it's like a joke that I make about myself, but the joke, I'll be just being frank. A lot of the jokes did not start out as me writing the joke about myself. It
Mm.
came as a comment I came up with that was not spoken out in the world, that I wrote. I was like, okay, the only way this is really funny is if I put it on me.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Taking your
yeah,
power
like,
back.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and also that kind of endears you to the audience. Like a lot of people are like, okay, like this guy's like, self awareness matters a lot to me when it comes to watching a new comic. So when
Mhm.
I see a comic who's like very aware of the situation and of himself or herself,
Mhm.
uh, first of all, I'm already listening.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I tend to like people like that.
Same.
totally.
Same. I actually I find a real kinship in you in that. I found a lot of my life has been reclaiming things or taking things. my first nickname, I was called Scarecrow in my neighborhood because I was so
Oh,
skinny
goodness.
and I was all lanky and everything.
Oh.
And at first I was offended. It kind of hurt a little bit. I just eventually,
Sure.
you kind of like, well, no, you find things about it that you like to make it your own. When I moved
Sure. Yeah.
Wisconsin, I stood out like a sore thumb and eventually just kind of while realized really early on I was not going to fit in. So I embraced what I was and pushed it too far, like a lot of young people do, and like I do in general. But
The
um,
lesson.
yeah, you balance it out eventually. You balance it out eventually.
Yes.
But these
Well,
things
you
are important.
realize who you are.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of like it's going back to my Instagram handle. I came from a school bully.
Yeah.
Like I was just born this way. I was born without my right ear. A lot of the times when I was watching the Muppets, I was in the hospital waiting for another surgery.
Mhm.
Like I my start to things was far different than a lot of the people I went to school with,
Yeah.
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 and so that kind of thing. I mean, you either climb out of the rubble or it bears you.
Yep.
You have to learn to accept who you are as yourself. And Jerry Nelson had this wonderful line at the end of the documentary, Muppet Guys Talking, that and it's the reason why he's, aside from Jim, my favorite performer.
Mhm.
He goes, a lot of people who love the Muppets come from the world of feeling disenfranchised.
Mm.
And yeah, because you have these multiple worlds of frogs and pigs and chickens and bears and whatever,
Mhm.
you know, interacting with each other, being a part of a community. Um, there is no, for example, Kermit never gets upset with Gonzo because of how he looks. It's because he's trying to put forth these acts that don't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Kermit is very accepting of Gonzo as Gonzo.
Yeah.
Right.
It has nothing to do with where he's from or what he looks like. It's that his acts suck.
Yeah.
So
That's
it
that's the
it
essence of what we want, I think, as a society. It's to
Yeah.
treat
yes,
people that way.
yes,
And it's one thing
absolutely.
if you don't like a person because of their attitude or something like that. It's a whole different thing of look. And it's such an insightful point right there, man.
Yeah.
You
Thank you
never
for
hear
Yeah.
the
sharing.
Muppets ripping at each other's appearances. You
Yeah.
never hear anything like that.
No,
It,
no.
it it's a really insightful thing to think. I hadn't thought of that even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I bring that up because and I was just watching this episode the other day. I think it's the Lola Falana episode in season 4 where Gonzo decides to go to Bombay, India and become a movie star. Um,
Yes.
Kermit really has Gonzo's back in that episode.
Yeah.
He, despite all the weirdness and the what the heck is this type of stuff, Kermit has a tremendous amount of love for his friends.
Yeah.
He has a tremendous amount of love, and he is never wimpy about it.
Yeah.
He is the leader because he is able to sanction so many different personalities.
Yeah.
That is a lot of strength.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
definitely. Oh, Kirby. Thank you for sharing all of that, Lucas.
So relatable and
Yeah,
also different like you were saying your start
perspective.
to this, yeah, your
Yeah.
perspective is a lot different than ours or other people's. I again find a relatability in that
Yeah.
growing up around a lot of violence at a young age, like a lot of TV movies were an escape for like a lot of people,
Mhm.
but with the Muppets I found a relatability with we were touching on this even a little bit earlier about how they would be edgier, some of the edgier comedy or some of the more violent stuff that would happen and some of those things back when we were growing up. That stuff I was already familiar with some things in that world, but seeing it in this light, it lightened it up. It made it
Yeah.
not as heavy. It made it not as and even made it in some ways like, oh, it's not just me. There's others going through this. There's you find a connection and a family almost in that in these
Oh,
characters.
Oh,
yeah. It's again, it kind of goes back to just owning who you are, and I think if you're able to own who you are, then you know the the people around you are going to have a lot of uh, richness and value. and it's a stronger bond with the people around you once you're fine with yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gotta love yourself so you can love others.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
it's funny how like those old sayings, sometimes they do get a little worn out or whatever, but the proof of it always comes out.
Mhm.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
They're cliche because they're true, sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, that's why I love doing toy photography.
Right on. Yeah. Yep. See, we got it. We got there.
There we
And
go.
we don't want to keep you for too long, Lucas, or anything, but we've really been enjoying this. I don't want to wrap up on a difficult question, but I did tell you that we were going to have some hardball questions here. So I'm glad that we're able to have some fun here, but it is time we have to do some work.
Get ready.
Do you, if you were suggesting to somebody to take a look at your page or take a look at your work, do you have a single photo that, hey, I don't want to say your favorite, but one that you are really proud of, a
Mm.
work that you're maybe not even just a still, but maybe one of the music things that you did with the music in the picture, anything like
Yeah.
that you have that really stands out for you? Again, don't mean to ask hardball questions here, but we have to.
Right.
In
Uh,
part two of the interview, we'll get into cold fusion and some of those things. Some completely have nothing to do with the Muppets.
well, I may not be able to zero it in on like one or two photos, but I can at least zero it in on my favorite types of toy photos to do, which are the Muppets.
Yeah.
Um, and truth be told, I've probably worked the hardest on the Muppet one. Sometimes I have an idea for something, but for whatever reason, as I'm setting it, I was like, it just doesn't look right. Um, there's never really one photo, but at least there is one genre, and that is the Muppets. Like I do feel like, um, in terms of the work I put in and the reception people have had towards what I've put out there, the Muppets have been the biggest sell.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, and really, in terms of like my page, that's a collaborative effort with Muppet fans all across the globe. Like that was not. I was listening to an interview with Frank Oz recently, and he was talking about himself and his being a former director and all that, and he goes, I did not work in a vacuum. He goes, there's a dozen people,
Yeah.
Jim, Jerry Jewell, Dave Goals, all these. He goes, these guys should all be sitting around me as you're talking to me because I did not do this in a vacuum. He
Yeah.
goes, like, and I kind of feel the same way with my page because I've had people across the globe and who are still helping today, who are,
Wow.
there are people there are different Muppet toys in Europe. There are different Muppet toys in Australia.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, wow.
even like little things like Happy Meals, you'd be surprised that
Hmm.
we didn't get here in the States.
Yeah.
Oh, I
You
had
know,
no idea.
Yeah.
yeah. So like when it comes to the page, like it certainly started off the first year or so, me doing everything I could, pulling out everything I own. Uh, but then it was like, okay, I need to start reaching out and seeing what other people would like to contribute because I knew a lot of people at the time who had different collections and whatnot. So I was like, let's make this bigger. Let's expand it. Let's see what else we
Yeah.
can
I love that.
bring forth. Yeah,
That's so cool. What an awesome Muppety community. And very
yeah.
much in the vein of Muppets, welcoming to all and creating that collaboration. That's beautiful.
We're really glad that you got into the Muppet photography and everything. It brought all of us together. This has been great.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun, man.
Thank you. And I gotta admit, like, I'm very I do love seeing other toy photographers who do Muppets, but I'm the one who does it the most.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so
And you do it well.
I'm very proud of that fact. Like I'm proud that, like
Yeah.
I'm putting little things out there to remind people of the Muppet Show, Jim Henson Hour, the 2015 show, the movies, like I like being able to be like, hey, remember that thing? Well, here's
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
whatever.
Absolutely. And it just brings a smile to all of our faces because we do get to feel attached to that photo, seeing a
Yeah.
familiar face and everything. So
Sure.
thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than just nostalgia that makes it fun. It's
Yeah.
nostalgia with taking well, it's like seeing, okay, I have the color blue here. This is what I'm going to do with it, and then seeing what you do with it, and that's kind of fun with these characters and with some of these things is seeing your creative kind of getting an idea, look in your head and seeing that you're funny and you're creative. And
Yeah,
I like being able to do that for people. Your stuff is fantastic.
Truly.
nice.
If people want to like your page, which I have no doubt if they haven't done so already, they're definitely going to after this conversation.
Yeah.
How can they find you, man? Where can they find your work?
So it's on Facebook. It's called the Muppet Collection page. And yeah, like I said, we're closing it on 13,000 followers.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I love it. Feels like once a month I'll get somebody who will write me personally and be like, how did I not see this page? I love what you're showing. I've never found this item before, or I haven't seen this item since I was a little kid. Thank you
Yeah.
for telling me where I can find it. So which, by the way, when it comes to that kind of thing, like old Muppet stuff, eBay is your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know.
But yeah,
I'm gonna have to go on that page. I have a few Muppet toys I've gotten. Well, I got one from you, and I got two from my father-in-law. I should snap some pictures and
Yeah.
put them on the page.
very cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Lucas, thank
Yeah.
you so much for the time, man. This has been great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're gonna have to probably do this again with us sometime, though. We're gonna
I
have to
would
catch
love
up
to.
again sometime.
If I can ask you guys a question real quick,
Yeah.
if I got the time, of course, I would love to hear from both of you your guys' favorite Muppet song.
Muppet
Oh.
song.
What Muppet song speaks to you the most?
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Oh wow. I feel like automatically I want to say Rainbow Connection because that's kind of like a bam.
Yeah.
But oh, there's just so many. There's so many
a
that I
million of
love. I love it's kind of like a little niche, but I love we're doing a sequel from Muppets Most Wanted. I don't know what it is
Yeah.
about that song, but it makes me so
I hear
happy
that song and I
inside.
think of you because of how happy it makes you. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's such a great song.
Yeah.
How's it going? It's not easy being green.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
sweet.
think for sure. There is an incredible poem, Black Like Me, Langston Hughes, and that poem was always really influential to me as a kid because I didn't obviously read it as an African American, but I read it as somebody because in that he's talking about not just being African, but the individualism that we all have.
Yeah.
And being proud of that and embracing that. And that's what I got from It's Not Easy Being Green. It's giving you an insight of what it's like to be a green amphibian a bit, if you want to take it that literal way necessarily. But I think that like a lot of things with the Muppets, it's metaphorical. There's a lot of ways
Oh
that
yeah.
you can insert yourself in there no matter who you are, no matter what you are. You can put yourself in those shoes in the webbing.
Yeah.
And think, okay, well, current like a lot of things with Kermit kind of being the person that we live vicariously through or kind of gives us an insight or a bit of something different. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, thank you for
But that's the
that.
first
That was
one that
a sweet
pops in my
answer.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
good
Yeah,
stuff.
of course. Do you guys have a favorite? Do you guys have a favorite episode of the Muppet Show?
Oh wow. Huh. I'm
Mm.
kind of in the midst of like rewatching some of them because it had been a long time, but my favorite one as a kid was the John Cleese episode.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's up there for me. You actually mentioned one of my favorites earlier, the Alice Cooper interaction.
Yeah.
That was one of mine as a kid because my dad is a big classic rock guy, is a big
Yeah.
and loves a lot of that music. So this was somebody that I had heard that my dad had heard of, and I remember grabbing my dad and being like, "Dad, Dad," and he didn't believe me. What are you talking about? He's like, Alice Cooper's on the Muppets. What are you talking about? And yeah, sure enough, he is. And it's one of my earlier memories of I always was trying to get into his stuff.
Oh,
The things that he was into. It was kind of him getting into something that I did. We've done that a lot since, but that was maybe the first time that happened.
that's sweet.
Nice.
I like
How about
that.
you?
Very cool. I love the Loretta Swit episode
Oh,
where Kermit fires Piggy. And you know what's funny is I found a documentary. I think it came up around 2006. It's not that well known, but it is on YouTube.
Okay.
And Frank Oz is in it. Some of the other guys are in it, and Frank talks only about that episode in it, which I thought was so funny
Really?
because that had been my favorite since I was a little kid. Because you get these really hilarious moments where Kermit just blows his stack and fires Piggy, but then you get this very sweet, quiet moment where Piggy cannot karate chop her way to through the situation,
Mm-hmm.
where she is actually forced to have some self-awareness, even after the point where she goes, she makes the comment. She goes, let's discuss why I resigned. And Kermit's like, oh, you weren't resigned. You were fired. She goes, there's many reasons why I resigned. But then Piggy is forced to uncover some of that vulnerability because she's afraid of, more than losing the show, she's afraid of losing Kermit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And not just as a relationship, but as a friend who it's not, Piggy, of course, lusts after Kermit, but she also really loves Kermit.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I've seen that episode, so I'm gonna have to watch it because it sounds like
wild.
You're
sounds
gonna
like a
love
good
that
one.
episode.
It's wild. It's very funny. But yeah.
So
you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, we had one more. We had
Yeah.
one more.
Question.
Yes, and it's again not an easy one, but you kind of actually teased it earlier. We're gonna find who is your Muppet, who is your favorite Muppet, or maybe even who is the Muppet you relate to the most.
Yeah.
I've rambled a million times about Gonzo and how I feel about him.
Yeah.
Part of the reason he's my favorite is because I find such a relatability to him.
Yeah. So the older I get, the more I'm kind of split between Rolf and Floyd.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think a lot of people's favorite is Rolf. And it's funny, I was very fortunate to have had dinner completely by accident with the Jim Henson biographer Brian J. Jones.
Whoa. Oh my
I was
God.
I was down in Mississippi for the book signing when he released the book. And afterwards, a fellow Muppet fan took me to this Italian restaurant. And we're sitting down, and in walks Brian J. Jones, as well as the people at the event center. And they asked us, because we went in there early, we were talking to them. They go, do you want to come sit with us and have dinner? I was like,
oh my gosh, wow.
So through that, like Brian J. Jones and I were talking, and I go, I got to ask, who's your favorite Muppet? He goes, across the board, Rolf. Yeah, that's a pretty solid answer.
Yeah.
But Rolf is great because he's unbelievably funny, very quick-witted. He's the only person who not only works with Miss Piggy more than Kermit, but probably understands Piggy better than Kermit.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah.
He is incredibly funny. And then something Frank Oz said, and I think it was in that same documentary I just mentioned. I love those little like musical pieces that Rolf did. There's almost no comedy tied to it. It's just him at the piano and sometimes Zoot. And it's just just something quick, classy, and it's very beautiful. Rolf is a very well-rounded individual.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The culture show in many ways.
Yeah. And then Floyd, so in the Sesame Street documentary, they were talking about Jerry Nelson. And they go, there was nobody cooler on set than Jerry Nelson. He understood people comedically. He understood people musically. They had said in Richard Hunt's book, he had a Forrest Gump life before he even met Jim.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, and also because he was so musically savvy, that's why he did all these wonderful numbers with like Dizzy Gillespie, Melissa Manchester, Cleo Lane. Like he was the guy that really made the music what it was. He and of course Louis Bowles. And also something I really love about Floyd, especially in the later seasons, he is that guy just kind of in the background reading a newspaper who he's he's a little bit more mature than the rest of the group, but he's also there too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
totally.
And he has some of the funniest lines. Like he's probably kind of up there with Piggy and Rolf in terms of like adult humor
Yeah.
Yeah.
because he's very cutting, he's very cool, he's very funny. Uh, yeah, there's just something I've always really liked about Floyd's personality.
Yeah.
Great.
I love when he laughs and his like little tunnel eyes close. That's my favorite.
It's good. It's good.
You know what's funny is I always took his eyes kind of like how Dr. Teeth's glasses are his eyelids / eyebrows.
Yeah.
I have always taken it as if those are his sunglasses and his sunglasses blink. Like that's just a feature that
How did I
Muppet
like that?
has.
That's fun. I like that.
I
I
think
like
that's
that.
how I'm gonna
Yeah.
see it now.
Yeah, I think that you've changed that for the way we see that. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that combo though of Ralph and Floyd. And I know we haven't like talked super long, but I see the personality in there
Absolutely.
of both of them. Definitely. And by the way, I love your shirt.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you.
shirt.
Yeah, no, I was
it took us too long to
Yeah.
get to the shirt. Yeah, it's a great shirt.
well, and I feel like I talk about this in every interview, but I was there when they did it in LA.
Mm.
And I was very fortunate to go backstage, and I met Matt Vogel, Peter
Wow.
Lenz, Karen Prell,
Oh my gosh.
Dave Goles. Dave Goles made me cry.
I could see
Oh.
that. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, because like going back to when we were talking about Gonzo earlier, you look at how Gonzo is this wonderful symbol of acceptance within the Muppet group. And growing up, I really love Gonzo and I love Boober Fraggle, which if you look at both of them, they're
Yes,
both sides of the same coin.
they are. Oh, they are so much. Yes.
Yeah. And so to see him and think about, forgive me, thinking about being in the hospital, getting ready for surgeries and treatments and all that kind of crap, and seeing Gonzo and Boober and Uncle Matt and Zoot and Beauregard and all those guys. When I saw Dave Goles, I had the Brian J. Jones book on me and I was having everybody sign it. He kind of surprised me by cutting basically in front of me. And when I looked up, he's right in front of me. And I go, "You're Dave Goles." He goes, "I am Dave Goles." And I'm getting ready to say I love Gonzo, but the moment I hit the G in Gonzo, I just got too choked up. And I finally got Gonzo out and I go, "I'm so happy to meet you." And he just gives me the biggest hug. He goes, "We're so happy to have you here. Where are you from?" We talked about, Gonzo and Boober and Uncle Matt for a minute. And you talk about meeting your heroes and having the absolute every expectation exceeded.
Yeah.
Like there is that warmth. They would not play those characters if that was not already in their nature, in their personality, in their spirit. Like there's a tremendous amount of raw, genuine kindness and love when you meet those people, and not just Dave.
Mhm.
They are so excited that you're there. They're so excited that you are helping keep this legacy going. They are thrilled that you are loving what they're doing today.
Yeah.
They're psyched. They are so psyched.
That's so wholesome.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, you're a great storyteller, by the way. I really just like forgot we were recording a podcast and just listening to your story and seeing it in my head. Thank you for sharing that. That was so
Yeah.
cool.
But yeah, no, this is why I do it. This is why I was so excited to talk to you guys and really anybody who has like this level of love to where you want to talk about it openly, you want to find the fans, you want to have these discussions. This is kind of what keeps it alive and brings it together. This is what makes it so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's why we were excited to talk with you too. Just keep
Yeah.
expanding this Muppety community.
Yeah. We
Absolutely.
appreciate you, Lucas. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so
Gosh, thank you guys. Really, this is great. This is so much fun.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Be on the lookout for part 2, everybody. And be sure to follow his page and keep up to date with all the good work he's doing.
Yeah, Lucas, do you want to shout out your Instagram and Facebook one more time?
Yeah. So My Instagram is Earless Wonder 85. And then my Muppet page on Facebook is the Muppet Collection page. And of course, if you're following me on there and you have your own Muppet collection, I would love to debut it and feature it. We actually have a kid coming up. I think he's like 12 or 13 years old who makes his own Muppets out of clay because he started getting the Muppet toys. And he's like, well, they didn't make this figure and they didn't make that figure. So he just, as his kid, like started making them out of clay.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd seen him featuring this stuff on other Facebook pages. And I asked him, I go, if you'd like, I can feature it on mine. He's like, yes. And of course, like it's, you know, it's through his mom's page and, you know, she allows him to, you know, do this. I was like, any photo you want to put up, anything you want to talk about or share about your designs, I will put you in quotes to where it's you talking.
Wow.
That's perfect.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
What an outlet.
We're huge supporters and believers of artists supporting artists, creatives supporting creatives. I love that about that page and the work that you're doing, and that you are just as excited, if not more excited, to put other people's work ahead than your own. We relate to that.
Yeah.
We get that a lot. That's really cool, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
cool.
again, Lucas.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Seriously, both of you. You guys are tremendous people. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
That's all her.
No.
That's all.
But we really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a great day, you guys.
You too.
Thank
You too, man.
You too.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Take
Yeah,
care.
we'll see you later.